what happens. Now, we actually, interestingly enough, monitor how close to the asking price is a selling price. And again, it's going to vary on the market conditions. But again, you've got to go through the agent on this. And now the agent, remember, is acting for the seller. That is their client, although they have a duty of care to you as the potential purchaser. But they remember, they're not acting for both sides. They're not acting for you. They're acting for the seller. But they will have a feel for what the owner is thinking. And I think what I'll probably say is, if you're in the good position you said earlier, you can be a bit cheeky actually at the moment. You can go in there and you can make an offer, perhaps a reasonable bit below the asking price, maybe 10% or whatever, something like that.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? You've got nothing to lose, and they'll soon say, no, I'm sorry. But use the agent, though, and go in there, and the agent will guide you through the process.
OK, all right. So once the price has been agreed, what's the next step for the buyer?
Okay, what tends to happen at that stage, you will probably already have looked at the home information pack, because that has to be made available to you when the property is marketed. So if you go in as a buyer and say, right, okay, where's the home information pack? The agent, first of all, has got to show it to you, unless they've got absolutely strong reasons for not doing so. And there are some reasons why they can't, but let's assume that you're not one of them. They also have to give you a copy of it if you ask for a copy, but they can, just be warned, can make a reasonable charge for that, paper copy, photocopying, whatever.
But you perhaps need it for your solicitor.
Well, the good agents will actually be handing that across, or a copy across, to your solicitor, because that's the next stage. What happens is that the agent will then find out who is going to be acting for you as the buyer, and on the seller's side as well. They're probably, unless you've already told them that, and they will send what's called a memorandum of sale to the solicitors, which kickstarts the process. Your solicitor will then start conversations and letters with the vendor solicitor, going through all the legal process, the extra questions they need to ask to make sure everything's perfectly all right. In the meantime, you will have gone back to your mortgage broker or your mortgage company and said, right, I want this property, and they will have filled all of the application forms in with you, and they may or may not want to do a full survey on the property.
And this process can take some time.
It can. I mean, again, it's certainly going to take many weeks quite often. There's absolutely nothing to stop it happening in 24 hours. If you went in and said, I've got cash, and the solicitor actually gets a move on. There's one thing as a buyer you might want to think of. This sort of property that we're in here today was built many years ago. It's a lovely, lovely old cottage. You probably would actually want to have a little bit of peace of mind by getting a more formal survey done on the property as a buyer, rather than perhaps you wouldn't bother if it was a brand new property.
Sure.
So again, a local estate agent surveyor can advise you, because there are different types of survey. But one thing, again, as a buyer, you should remember is what's called the mortgage valuation you get from the lender is not a survey.
No.
All it is doing is saying to the lender, yes, I believe this property is fit for you to be able to lend that amount of money on. It's not a survey, and whilst it'll pick up, or should pick up, any major faults, you can't rely on that. Right. So if you're in any doubt, ask whether you should have a survey.
And so in fact, if you were in any doubt and the mortgage survey didn't pick up these major faults, would you then as a buyer be liable to put them right? You wouldn't have any redress to the mortgage company?
No, you wouldn't, because we operate in this country a thing called caveat emptor, which means, in effect, buyer beware. So it is entirely up to the buyer to be satisfied that they're buying what they should be buying, and that if there's anything wrong with it, they're happy. Even if there was a problem with the roof, for instance, it's not incumbent on the estate agent or the vendor to actually tell you there's something wrong with the roof unless you ask.
Right.
So people have got to be aware of that. In America, it's the other way around. The seller, interestingly enough, has to divulge everything about the property, including whether it's got termites, up front. But over here, no. So as a buyer, be very, very aware that you've got to make sure that you are satisfied with that property. OK. I'm satisfied with the property, and I've agreed the price, and my solicitor knows what's happening. Mm-hmm. What's next? OK, you're going to get to the exciting time, hopefully not many weeks down the line, when your solicitor will ring you and say, oh, come in and sign. And what they mean by that is come in and sign the formal legal contract. What normally happens there is the solicitor will go through the contract with you, and most of the time there's actually nothing for him to tell you, but occasionally they'll say, by the way, if you ever wanted to extend the property, for example, there's a covenant here which says you have to get permission of the original builder or something like that. So they will go through it with you. If everybody's happy, they will get you to sign the contract, and normally you'll pay a deposit of 10%. So that's 10% of the agreed purchase
Asking
price.
price, yeah.
And that then gets transferred to the seller's solicitor. The seller's solicitor, in the meantime, my solicitor, would have got their client in to sign. They will then swap contracts, which is called exchanging contracts. And within that contract, it would actually be agreed beforehand what the completion date is. Often, that's